Welcome back to the podcast. We're excited in this episode to bring you a chat with the Director of Marketing at Glen-Gery. And Glen-Gery, for those of you who don't know, is a brick manufacturing company that has been around since the 1890s, which is just kind of insane to think about. But we're very excited today because of the launch of a new book that they just put out that's free for anybody really in the AEC industry who's interested in brick. And that is the release of FOLIO. FOLIO is a fantastic analog product and really going against the grain of media today where everything seems to be on the screen. We get a little bit into that during this episode, but having an analog book to hold in your hands and thumb through and really look at some fantastic photography, some storytelling, and even some details. It's really great to kind of see these case studies in what can be done today with brick. So Cormac and I sat down to really get behind the scenes look at how this whole initiative came to fruition and what they're doing in the near future as well at Glen-Gery. So without further ado, we bring to you our conversation with Glen-Gery Brick. Welcome back to the Archispeak podcast. My name's Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And recently in the mail, I just got this amazing book. And, you know, I kind of go back and forth. Is it a book? Is it a magazine? It's not a magazine. It doesn't have any ads in it.
Exactly.
So it's really a book. And it's called FOLIO. And Cormac and I saw this, and we felt like, well, we had to speak with the group that put this together. So that would be our guest today. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to conversation. Yeah,
so this book is amazing. And I think what I like about it is it just gives me all the architectural feels again.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? For those of us who are so used to looking at stuff on a screen nowadays, especially, that to me was probably the thing that stood out the most was that you guys would go through the effort and just the graphic design that comes along with a physical copy of something that's just different than putting something together for the screen. You know, we're so used to responsive websites and flexible layouts, and depending on which device, like you didn't have to worry about that, but there's a whole different set of constraints when it comes to laying something out for print. So I'm just wondering, you know, maybe you can set the stage, tell us a little bit about Glen-Gery and tell us a little bit about FOLIO to kick things off.
Sure. I'm Tim Leese, Director of Marketing here at Glen-Gery. We're one of the largest brick manufacturers in the United States, a large, diverse product offering dating back to 1890. We're part of Brickworks out of Australia, and Brickworks is one of the world's largest and most diverse building material manufacturers and the largest brick maker in Australia. And when Brickworks acquired us back in 2018, they were really about cutting-edge marketing and thought leadership and really implementing some of the marketing strategies that worked in Australia for many years. And FOLIO was one of those pieces that we're really excited to kick off and get started here in the U.S. And as you mentioned, you know, we're in a digital society, but it's really a publication that you need to see and print and hold and be able to flip through the pages and see some of the art that's inside of it. So it's really about presenting brick in a more unique way. I mean, we all know the benefits brick has, but there's also that aesthetic appeal. And we wanted to represent all the design styles that brick use from today and showcase these projects and the thought process that went behind the design and really feature the architect's work in FOLIO. So it's really our intent with the publication.
I got to tell you, I completely forgot how much I enjoy that new book smell. You know, when I got it in the mail and I unpackaged it, I'm like, it's a book.
It's like going into a library or a bookstore that we haven't been in so long.
Exactly. And the great thing that I like about it, as you said, I'm very familiar with Glen-Gery, and it's amazing that I've worked on projects that you guys have probably worked on when you were an infant company back in the 1890s in the state of Maryland with some of the lines of brick that you guys have. And it's just amazing to kind of see this book and showcase some of the pretty amazing things that people are doing with brick today that might have gotten a little bit lost through looking at different materials and different things like that. And so to see everything that you guys showcase in here, it's pretty interesting to kind of almost reinvigorate the design aesthetic of brick.
Brick's obviously been around for a while, and while it's a traditional material, today's architecture uses brick in many different styles, whether it be modern, contemporary. And I think it's evolved, and I think just communicating and showcasing the projects that use brick in different ways and featuring different details, I think is really important to help grow that market and help promote the category.
Yeah, it seems like with FOLIO, you guys have really shown a modern take with modern architecture, with modern design principles on brick. Because me coming, especially from the West Coast perspective, which is very different than what you guys are used to, I think a lot more so than I am on the East Coast, as Cormac just mentioned. To me, that is really eye-opening. And you do feature a West Coast project in here, maybe more than one, but the Brickyard from Michael Malton Architects in here is a very modern take on thin brick in this case. But there's also lots of really interesting kind of case studies in brick in this magazine, in this book. And it seems to me that I'm seeing stuff in here where brick is being used in very innovative ways. So I wonder, has the material itself evolved over time?
Brick there's a lot more colors and textures and sizes of brick today than there was in years past. And I think some of that is due to advancements in technology and also a greater focus on product development as a manufacturer. We seek out color trends and design trends and try to manufacture and develop products that meet those trends rather than sticking with something that's, maybe more traditional. And then I think a lot has to do with the architectural process as well. I think architects, at least from my perspective, are finding new ways to use brick. So I really think both from a product development and a product standpoint, and from the design side, it's evolved to really feature brick and showcase brick in ways that it hasn't in the past.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. So started my career down in kind of the deep south. I went to Auburn, and so everything there is brick, but everything was very traditional. And so then when I moved back home to Florida, everything was more stucco. You didn't really ever consider using brick as kind of a modern interpretation of a building material. And then fast forward, my career brings me up to the Washington, D.C. area. And there's a mix of old and new, traditional, all the way back to pre-colonial, all the way to now. And so it's really exciting to kind of see, and FOLIO does a great job of showcasing the modern interpretation of the use of brick. There's projects in FOLIO that kind of express, like, say, picture framing a window. And a lot of times, we would kind of almost default to doing it in a different material because, it's easier just to kind of I want to do this like real thin kind of picture framing. And you do that with multiple materials. And so those multiple materials start to have different interfaces and different flashing details. And by the way, I'll go down some rabbit holes of like project management and detailing and stuff. So bear with me here. But you have all these different details. And then I look at the 5 Franklin Place and the picture framing around the 5 Franklin Place in New York City. We would normally default to some different materials, but making it a more monolithic material, you've actually taken brick to a different level of detailing, both on the aesthetic side, but also on the practical side of things. So now I don't have different interfaces of material coming together and flashing and trying to like weather seal all that other stuff. I mean, you've made it very monolithic, and it kind of excites me to see the projects that you guys showcase in FOLIO and to see the opportunities to do some of the things that are kind of in vogue right now in design, and being able to do them in a more traditional material, but in a very modern way.
Yeah, I think through some of the standard and custom shapes that can be developed with brick is you get that endless array of design opportunities on buildings like the 5 Franklin Place. I know that one used countless number of shapes. But then also one of my favorites is Wegmans Hall.
Oh, yeah.
at the University of Rochester. So it kind of tells the brick in a different way, where they're protruding out the wall in a pattern that's meant to represent binary code. So just taking the standard brick and detailing it in a more unique way. And it's a traditional red color too, but through that process, he creates something that's truly unique.
Even on the cover, where you see the textures that are created, not just by the brick, because there's a variety of bricks in some unique shapes that kind of create the window surrounds. But then you add the extra layer of the reveals and the shadow lines and everything else, and it makes it a very dynamic kind of facade. In Wegmans Hall, definitely, that was one that kind of spoke to me, because I worked on a project recently that was a chemistry building, and as you looked through the windows that were the full 5-story high, on the elevator wall that you could see through the windows, we had kind of a chemical makeup of all of the different chemistry that is done throughout the university on this wall. And so it looks like this big 5-story mural that kind of cuts through it. And to see people start to do that a lot more often with trying to kind of like have the building express the user group in Wegmans Hall was definitely one that did that. And when I saw it in you do this great shot of a midday, and then it kind of like transitions throughout the day as the sun moves. And so you've got this deeper shadow, these kind of shadows that are cast across the facade that just make it a completely different feeling throughout the day. So the building isn't just a static building that just sits there at one point in time of history. It actually starts to change and evolve throughout the day. And really, I can even see, where, well, what happens when, the snow hits these and all of this other stuff. So you just kind of have this character to, Wegmans that captures like what's going on the campus at that given time.
That's another great point about FOLIO is there's a great story behind every project. And traditionally, we'd promote our products through imagery and still photography, and we really didn't get behind the scenes on what was in the architect's mind when designing that, and allowing them to tell that story about their project. We're the manufacturer of the material on the facade, and there's really a good story. And I think the more we evolve our efforts, the more we can collaborate and tell more of these stories to a larger audience.
When I see things like that code that's made out of the brick patterns and the shade and shadow patterns that come out because of that, it reminds me of some of the old master architects' work that makes me think of a great use of brick, right? I've talked about Alvar Aalto's use of brick, talked about Louis Kahn's use of brick, obviously, in Pennsylvania. It's even referenced in one of the stories in FOLIO, when Kahn asked the question, what do you want to be, brick? And so it's really interesting to me to see that evolution of how people are reinterpreting the use of brick. And what I like about what I'm seeing in this book is you guys aren't shy about showing the detail shots, and you're not shy about telling the story, and you're not shy about showing the different patterns. And like those close-ups are what architects really like to focus in on, because it gives people a real idea of how they can turn corners and how they can play with pattern and shade and shadow and color and module and all of those things. So to me, it really does kind of get to the case study level. It's not just photos. There is a narrative. There's also some details. There's some diagrams. And all of that really helps kind of reinforce the use of a particular material, because it's kind of an instruction booklet, a light version of an instruction booklet. You can use this on your project too. And I think that's probably one of the things that makes me think of when I thumb through a book like this, is it not only inspires you to see projects like that and reinvigorate your love for a material that's been around for so long in new ways, but it also gives you the opportunity to think about how you could apply these to projects that you're working on today, because it goes beyond the surface.
And that's really one of our intents, is to not only inspire, but to engage with architects and get the thought process started about some of these unique details, and really, look toward, the future.
So when you're thinking about inspiring architects, with these kinds of projects. I mean, let's just go meta into that for a minute. And what inspired you guys to do this project? What inspired you to do a print version in I don't know, I want to say like in times like these, but yeah, that is kind of what I mean to say.
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, I really think it's something that you need to hold and feel to really appreciate the aesthetic appeal of the buildings. We have a digital version that we won't even make available until all the printed copies are distributed, just because there's so much more you get out of, as you suggested, thumbing through the book and looking at things and reading it. It's more a coffee table piece as well that can sit and inspire. But the inspiration was really, going beyond promoting the inherent benefits of brick and really being able to showcase great projects and the aesthetic appeal of those projects.
So, Evan, I'll give you my take on why I prefer the print version versus the digital version is one. So I've got my copy, and I probably have at least 15 different tabs that I've written little notes on a sticky note, and I've stuck it to that page and stuff like that, that when I'm able to once again be back in the office with my colleagues, Tim, our firm, does a lot of collegiate work. And so obviously you can imagine that we do a lot of brick when we're doing some of this. And so we're always looking for the next kind of like, innovative way to use materials and stuff. So in creating this book for me, and now I've got examples that I have all of them readily at my fingertips. I don't have to where did I find that from? Or what was that project again? Or let me, I can't pick up my computer and drag it over to somebody else's desk unless, don't bring the whole iPad thing to me, Evan. But it's one of these things that if not everybody in the office has one, which I suggest they do, it's something that they, can pass around to each other and say, oh yeah, hey, you're working on this project here. Take this book and go take a look at one of the tabs that I have here on something that you're working on very similarly. And you can look at the inspiration behind some of those things and just see some of the creative ways that you can do it. That's what I love about it. I mean, I know that you and I have got a pretty extensive library, Evan, and it's having the visual Rolodex of projects and inspirations to be able to talk about it. And that's what I kind of appreciate about you guys at Glen-Gery putting together FOLIO, because it is just another asset to this kind of visual Rolodex that I have.
That's good to hear. As a manufacturer, we're always asking ourselves what the architects need and want to be able to help make those decisions and selections. And, the days of having large product catalogs and binders and brochures, I think, probably a bit behind us, but providing something that just provides inspiration and not necessarily that real hard sell of products and benefits. I think, it's good to hear.
So, Tim, in this book, you guys have lots of different projects, different scales of projects, all done by different architects. Maybe talk a little bit about who's in this and how you guys chose what to showcase in FOLIO.
So FOLIO represents 13 projects from 10 different firms. We chose N architects as our featured practice profile, where we went a little more depth about the firm, covered across several more of their projects. We basically chose them because of their heavy usage of brick over the years. And then, from there, it was really about representing a wide range of styles and projects and selecting architects and firms that created those special projects, whether it's Michael Malzahn in Los Angeles or some of our firms that we work quite a bit with in New York City, like ODA and N Architects, or Studio B in Colorado. It was really about selecting firms that featured great brick projects and wanting to be able to work with them and be able to hear their story was very important to us.
It seems like you guys really were able to cover such a huge range. And I think that's what also shows the benefits of the material is, a lot of people think a specific thing when they hear brick, but what this shows is that there's not a specific thing for brick. You can use it in so many different ways, in so many different scales of projects, in so many locations. That's what this particular addition really shows off.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So my assumption is that this is just the first of many. So what are your plans for Folio now that you have your first edition out? Do you have others planned?
Yeah, our intent is to continue producing these maybe every 18 months or so. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and we've already started collecting those projects that could be featured in the next edition. So I'd imagine over the summer, we'll develop that short list and look to produce edition 2 sometime mid 2022.
You guys have set a pretty high bar with this first one. How can architects have the opportunity to hopefully be in another edition of this?
So if architects want to request a copy or even submit a project for consideration, go to glengery.com/folio. And it features a request or a submission where you can submit all your information about your project, your firm. We'll get that and put it on our list to evaluate. There you can also request a hard copy that we'll get out in the mail right away, and you can have a look at it.
So speaking of analog things like Folio, you guys recently opened a design studio as well, right? A physical space in Philadelphia. Talk a little bit about why you guys would decide to do that and what that space is all about.
Design studios, it's a concept developed in Australia. They have 7 design studios around Australia. And we wanted to introduce that concept here in the United States and have a space for architects to collaborate, make product selections, and just as importantly, be educated. When events are allowed to happen again, we intend to have frequent events with speakers and invite architects in to engage and collaborate with other architects and really use it as a place to grow the architectural and design community through a premium experience. Philadelphia, we launched back in the fall, and we're looking to open up 2 more design studios this year, one in the historic Fells Point in Baltimore.
All right.
Yeah.
Right across the way from me.
Yep. So that we're hoping opens this fall, as well as our global flagship design studio on Fifth Ave in New York City. So it's really a concept that's new here. And we're excited about expanding those opportunities.
I mean, I really miss a showroom. I know you're not calling them a showroom, but it's I really miss being able to hold the materials in my hands. I think that is such a key component of picking the right material for the job. Is you got to take it out into the sunlight. You've got to look at it at different angles. You've got to really get a sense of the scale. It's one of the things that I might get laughed at by the younger crowd here, but understanding scale on a computer screen is really difficult. There's been countless times on this podcast where I've talked about designing a building and then going to that building for the first time that the primary structure goes up and you're like, holy crap, it's huge. And so even after you've done it a bunch of times, it's still difficult. I mean, that's where VR actually comes in a really interesting way, is it really helps you understand scale. But when you're talking about a material like this that really breaks down the scale of a building, it's a module, they're placed by hand. You can hold them in your hands. And it really does kind of set a different tone about how you're going to use that in your project. And I feel like showrooms are such a key component to that, or the ability to get samples, obviously, but to actually see different applications of it in kind of an intended potential use case. I think that would, I would really be looking forward. So I'm jealous that you're getting one out there in Baltimore, Cormac. I would love to visit one here on the West Coast.
I'm not, because I get one.
Maybe I can just come visit you guys, but that does sound like a really cool thing. And again, I appreciate the kind of analog aspect of that, right? Where it's creating an experience for the design community to see how they can use these materials on their projects in new applications and in new ways.
It's really a collaborative space. We'll have consultants and staff that will be able to help, guide you through that process, or, as you said, simply pull out samples and lay them on tables, take them outside, take them with you. And it's really a tactile product, and being able to do that in the space is definitely key and critical to the growth.
You mentioned tactile. That's just one of the things about brick that is so important. like I look at this Michael Malton project where it's an enormous project. The scale of it is huge. And there's this thin brick facade that wraps the entire volume, and it's this white thin brick, and it's, there's different sized openings all over the place. And to me, getting back to that tactile nature of it, is it does kind of encourage you to touch it versus like a plaster building. Like that feels kind of icky. I think brick has this really great feel to it, and it makes you kind of want to trace the joints with your fingers and things like that. And it encourages a little bit of interaction with the building if somebody's inclined to do that. That's something that's always stood out to me with materials like this that are kind of real world materials, they're not synthetic, they're made of the earth. And that to me is just a key component to great architecture, is that it encourages this level of interaction that people don't just go through the space. They're encouraged to sit there and touch it and really experience it on another level. So that's really exciting to me. And again, to provide a place where architects and designers can go and do that and really pick out exactly what they want and see those applications and get help to make it a reality on their project is a fantastic move. So that's really great to hear.
Funny you say that. I'm the same way. Even being in the industry, if I'm walking past a brick building or brick on an interior application, I always reach out and touch it and feel it, and just want to feel that texture and make sure it's real. And
yeah.
To this day, I continue to do that, even being in the industry, and touch the brick every day and look at samples and look at product. It's still something that interests me.
Yeah, it seems like it is one of the materials that is very tactile and very human scale. It's something that, because of just its inherent warmth, people kind of gravitate a lot more towards. And like I said, coming from Florida where, everything was more stucco and stuff, and then coming to the mid-Atlantic region and seeing the expanse of the different ways that people are using brick, both in the traditional fashion all the way up to something very more modern, it does kind of like draw you in, and you want to like touch it and see, what kind of joint do they use?
Mm-hmm.
Did they grapevine that, or is this a rake joint? So it's, I can totally like nerd out, because I don't think that there was any point prior to coming here that I was like, oh, I think I'm going to design in brick. And now one of my go-tos is brick, and really just trying to see what you can do to push it forward. And like I've said before, is something that I really kind of appreciate with FOLIO, is the fact that you can see all of these different inspirations. So I'm digging on it.
So Tim, question, and this is going to sound a little weird, but what's next for brick? It seems like we've always had brick. What kind of new developments are happening? Where is this going?
This summer, we're planning, as I said, the launch of several new design studios, but we're also planning a new product launch unlike any other seen in the industry. We're trying to compile all our new products, all our new textures, and pull them into a very innovative product launch this summer. So we're really excited about that. Following up on FOLIO, our parent company, Brickworks, they're launching a publication called Materiality. And it's really FOLIO on steroids, and it looks at great brick architecture. It's 300 plus pages, coffee table book, featuring many of the same projects that you see in FOLIO, and then some from the United States. So we'll be launching that publication here as well. And I think one of the more exciting things, which we're launching just this week actually, is our new design and content channel on Glen-Gery.com. So produce all the physical components of FOLIO and Materiality in our design studios, but we're also reinventing the digital space through this design channel, as we're calling it. It's really a new way to deliver content to our audience through video and more in-depth case study and more detailed and modern-looking project imagery. So that's actually, like I said, something we're launching this week and really excited about.
Well, that sounds fantastic. We will definitely have links to all of those things in the show notes so that people don't have to necessarily remember them. But Glen-Gery.com is the main place to find all of this information. And that's also, if you go to Glen-Gery.com/folio, It's where you can request a copy of FOLIO and even submit a project. And again, we'll have links to all of those things in the show notes, so you don't have to remember them, and you can just click on that if you visit the show notes for this episode. But Tim, it was fantastic to have you kind of give us a behind the scenes of how this came to be and what you guys are planning on doing in the near future. It sounds like there's just so many irons in the fire here. It's a really exciting time to see all of these developments all happening right now.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was enlightening from my side as well to hear the feedback about FOLIO and some of the things we have going on. So really appreciate the time today.
It was great talking to you.
Yeah, and again, just holding this in your hands is something not to be missed. So we here at the show really recommend everybody go get a copy because you'll enjoy it for sure.